The Life of Muhammad, Tahia Al-Ismail. Preface. Before approaching the wonderfully exciting life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the account of his overwhelmingly successful struggle to fulfill against heavy odds the mission with which he was entrusted by his Lord, which was to establish the best possible human situation which has ever existed on the face of the earth, it is necessary to have an overview of the nature of prophethood and human history in general. It is essential to see the story of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his community not as an isolated historical event, but in the context of the whole of history. If we do not do this, then a vital part of its significance will be missed, and we are in danger of misunderstanding the nature of what happened during those few years which were scant in number, yet vast in effect. To start with, it is necessary to jettison the commonly held modern superstition that we have now reached the summit of a slow and laborious process of evolution during the course of which the human creature somehow emerged out of a remote bestial past into a savage pre-human and then into the supposedly advanced, civilized creature of this time. As with many superstitions of this kind, quite the reverse is true. It is true that the surface of the earth was made ready to receive the human being and that this happened in several quite clearly defined stages. What is not true is that human beings evolved out of other animal forms. The early accounts are true, the later ones fabricated. The human creature was created complete and perfect, and with a totally different function to anything else in existence. Everything else was created to fulfill a limited, defined role in creation in unconscious submission to the complex network of laws that governed its existence. The human being, on the other hand, by virtue of faculties not present in any other creature, has the capacity to comprehend existence and, therefore by extension, worship the creator of the universe. Human beings were created to recognize and worship their creator and Lord. That is why we are here. Everything else was created to make this possible. However, it is in the nature of things that human beings are prone to lose sight of their true nature and fall prey to a short-sighted absorption in the world that surrounds them, becoming in the process virtually indistinguishable from animals and occasionally considerably worse. But because Allah is inexhaustibly merciful and desires the best for his creatures, human history was punctuated by the expression of that mercy in the form of messengers and prophets from Allah to his human creatures. These were men inspired directly by Allah himself to recall their fellow men to the truth, reminding them that worship of Allah is the cornerstone of their existence, and restoring the harmonious and just social situation, which is the inevitable outcome when human beings live in tune with their real nature. Not one human community was left without guidance, and the stories of those who brought and rebrought this guidance from their Lord, a guidance which was in each case essentially the same but which varied in certain respects according to the particular time and place, follow a largely predictable pattern. They appear in communities which had either not previously received revealed guidance or who had received it in the past and then neglected it and fallen into decadence. Their call to their fellows was largely ignored and frequently ridiculed, since they affirmed the power of Allah, which is invisible, against the power structure of their society, which was all that was manifest to their people. In the face of continual opposition, frequently accompanied by physical persecution, they persevered in their task of delivering Allah's message that there is no God except him, and that justice and harmony in human society are only possible when this is recognized and put into practice, following the example of the messenger and those who were sent before him. After a time, they usually succeeded in gathering around them a larger or smaller group of followers, often from among the poor and oppressed in their society. Finally, in the face of the continuing obduracy of those who opposed them, they were inspired to deliver warnings of the inevitable destruction of those who stand against the power of Allah. This was generally to little avail, with the result that society was wiped out with the exception of the messenger and his band of followers who survived to form the basis of a new community. In its turn, this new community expanded and flourished under the guidance of the messenger and his immediate successors until it, in its turn, went the way of the previous communities into decline and decadence. Then, once more, another messenger would be sent and the story repeats itself again. This cycle of renewal, growth and decay, occurring in conjunction with the appearance of envoys from Allah mirroring, as it does, all natural processes, is the true picture of human history. There is no steady, unbroken line of evolution, progress, or advancement, as the modern myth-makers would have us believe. Rather, there have been a great number of these human cycles, some simple and unpretentious, others of unbelievable complexity and sophistication, stretching right back to the very beginning of the human story. The number of those sent by Allah in the course of the span of human history to bring his guidance and re-imbue human communities with justice and moral parameters is certainly very great, and reckoned by some traditional authorities to be 124,000. It is obviously beyond the scope of this or any work to enumerate all of them, but it would be useful to look briefly at those who form, as it were, the landmarks of human history as we know it. This will enable us to see the story of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in the perspective to which it belongs. These pivotal human beings around whom the whole human story revolves are Adam (alayhi), Nuh, Noah (alayhi), Abraham (alayhi), Musa, Moses, alayhi salam, Isa, Jesus, alayhi salam, and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Adam alayhi salam was at once the first man and the first prophet and the progenitor of the whole human race. His story contains and prefigures the story of his descendants, and the Christian view of what happened completely misses the point. There was no original sin. The story of Adam is the story of the unfolding of the human creature. The important part of Adam's story is not his fall from the garden. The important part of his story is his regaining the mercy of Allah by means of the faculty of language and knowledge of the names with which his Lord had endowed him. The fall was the necessary manifestation of the frailty of human nature, the process of veiling which must necessarily take place if guidance is to be gained. In this lies the whole secret and indeed the whole point of human existence. Nuh alayhi salam marks the end of the first people, the ancients, and at the same time his story demonstrates in an archetypal way the prophetic pattern referred to above. He called his people to the truth for 9.5 centuries and was ignored and mocked by them. In the end, his guidance took the physical form of the ark, and he was literally entrusted with the reintroduction of human life, and animal life for that matter, to the surface of the earth. The people of his time were totally destroyed by the Great Flood, while he and his family, and those who followed him, by virtue of the guidance he received from his Lord, floated free and began literally all over again. Ibrahim alayhi salam also plays a vital part in the human story. The people of his time had once more become completely engrossed in and blinded by material existence until there was no one left practicing pure worship of Allah. He was chosen by Allah and inspired directly by him with a true understanding of the nature of the universe until he gained certain knowledge of the one God who is the creator and sustainer of everything in existence. He was the one chosen by Allah to bring back to the earth the knowledge of the unity of Allah, and he is the father both literally and metaphorically of all surviving true religious traditions. Literally, because many of those who upheld and defended this Unitarian belief, including both Isa alayhi salam and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, were his direct descendants, and metaphorically, because all teachings containing the Unitarian doctrine stem from his reaffirmation of Allah's unity. The story of Musa alayhi salam is again of immense significance for us as people of this time. In his confrontation with the monolithic power structure of pharaonic Egypt, there are many vital lessons for us, since the system which confronts us today is based on exactly the same principles. Much insight into our own situation can be gained from examining the details of the encounter between Musa alayhi salam and Fir'aun, Pharaoh. The second half of Musa alayhi salam's story deals with his relationship with his people, the Banu Israel. In the picture of these people which emerges from this story lies the key to the situation existing in the world today. The Jews' excessive love of this world, epitomized by their making of the golden calf and their desire for what they had left in Egypt, has stayed with them throughout their checkered history, and their tireless search for power in the world is largely responsible for the political and economic landscape of our time. It could be said that Musa alayhi salam marks the beginning of the modern and final age. Isa alayhi salam was the last of the prophets sent to the Banu Israel. He sealed the prophetic descent from Ibrahim alayhi salam in that line. His real function was to revive and purify the teachings of Musa alayhi salam among the Banu Israel, but as we know, Paul, who never met Isa alayhi salam, invented the religion of Christianity based on certain personal visionary experiences. After this already perverted version of the prophethood of Isa alayhi salam had been subjected to Greek philosophical principles and Roman pragmatism, both heavily tinged with outright paganism, and had then been further compromised by unscrupulous power brokers, it was far removed from its original purity. It was nevertheless, despite the perversion and many changes, based on the prophetic model, and because of this tenuous relationship was able to support the civilization which grew up under the name of Christendom. At the same time, because of the fundamental changes that were made to the original teaching, such as the attribution of divinity to Isa alayhi salam and the absorption of the Trinitarian thesis from Greek philosophy, Christendom proved powerless in the face of the onslaught of rational materialism in the guise of humanism. Its total collapse, egged on at every stage by Jewish influence desiring power and revenge, has led to the moral and social disintegration we find ourselves in today. From the story of Isa alayhi salam, we can clearly see how the prophetic inspiration forms the basis of social renewal, and how at the same time it becomes corrupted and in need of rejuvenation. The final renewal of the prophetic tradition was the function of the last prophet and messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it is in this perspective of constantly renewed divine guidance that we must view the story of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life. It was not an isolated event, but rather the culmination of a lengthy series of constantly renewed divine revelations. The finality of the prophethood of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam makes it, of course, relevant to us in a way that is not the case in any of the previous revelations, since by virtue of its lastness it contains the final instructions from the Creator to his creatures. Because of this, Allah has ensured that it has remained accessible to us in every detail, both as regards the actual revealed book, the Noble Quran, and as regards the implementation of the revelation in the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions. For this reason, study of this extraordinary story is absolutely necessary for all who want to know their place in human history and to know what a human being really is and how to become one.